All right, so now we're going to start to look at the classes that have to do with Flexbox, which is one of the reasons I really love Tailwind, is to just quickly create a Flexbox and align things on the fly. Now, I do expect that you have just a basic understanding of Flexbox as well as alignment with align items and justify content. I will explain stuff as I go, but my hope is that you have a base understanding of that. And I do have a free Flexbox crash course on YouTube if you're interested. So let's click on down here, Flexbox, and let's see, 13 Flex index HTML. And let's go ahead and just create a div here, and then we'll have, let's do a div, and we'll have 4 of these with just some numbers inside. So 01, 02, 03, 04. All right, so just a div with some divs inside. Now to create a Flexbox, I can just give it a class of Flex. And if I do that, you'll see they all move into a row and they go horizontal by default. All right, now you can change the direction to a column simply by adding flex.col, and now it's a column. All right, and typically what you'll see and what we're going to do in our projects is set it as a column to begin with, and then we'll say on medium screens, then we'll set it to a flex row, all right, so that it stacks on small screens, and then as you make the browser bigger, it'll turn into a row. In fact, let's add some extra classes onto this. So we'll do, let's say class padding 10. We'll give it a border. We'll say border dash blue dash 300, and let's do background blue dash we'll do 100. Okay, and I'm going to put this class on all of these. So let's go ahead and do that. Save. So now it's a flex column, right? So flex direction column because of this class, but when I hit the medium breakpoint, it turns into a row. All right, so I'm just going to keep it as a row for now. We'll just take this stuff off. And I'm going to also add onto the container here a couple classes. So I want to do a height. We'll do height 72, width 100%, so width full. And let's do BG gray dash 100. All right, so now what happened is I gave it a height, so by default these flex items are going to stretch to fill it. Okay, and that brings us to these alignment classes. So we have align items. I should probably push that over a little bit so it's more readable. But we have these align items CSS properties, which can be stretch, which is the default, which is what it is now. But then we also have baseline, center, flex end, flex start. So when we're dealing with a flex row, which is what we have right now, the align items property has to do with aligning it this way, okay, vertically. So as I said, item stretch is the default. So if I do that, there's no change. But if I do, let's say item start, then it's going to be at the start or at the top. If I do items center, that'll put it to the center. If I do items end, that'll push it to the end. Now, if we're dealing with a flex column, the align items property has to do with going horizontal. So if I change this to a flex call, then you'll see it's going to be pushed to the end here. And then if I do item center, it'll be in the center going this way. All right, that's if it's a column. But I'm going to keep it as a row. Now we also have the justify content property with all these values, and we have classes for each value. So let's go ahead and add in here. And this is always going to go on the flex container, not the individual items. There is a self class we can use for the individual item, which I'll show you in a second. But let's do, for instance, justify center. So that's going to put it in the center going horizontally. If I wanted it to the end, we could say justify end. If I wanted the remaining space to be put around all the items, we could say justify around. That includes, over here and over here. If we don't want to put the space on the end, we can do justify between. And now you'll see there's no space on the ends. It's all, it's all in the middle here. Okay, and it doesn't matter how big or small the screen is. Now I can also wrap my items. So let's say we have a bunch of these here. So if I save that as is, then they're still going to be aligned in a column, and I have to scroll over out of the page, and it just doesn't look very good. So we could use the class of flex wrap in this case, which will automatically drop them down, when it can't fit all of them. So that can really come in handy as well. Now, the stuff that I just showed you as far as the flex column and having it as a column and then in a row on medium screens and up, also the items, align items, justify content, that's probably like 80% of what you're going to do with Flexbox. We have some other stuff I'm going to show you, but that's going to be a lot of what you do with Flex. So let's first of all get rid of all of these. And then I'm going to grab this, come down here, and just so you have an example of a column, let's do flex call here. Okay, and we can use gap on here, the gap class. So for instance, we can do gap 4, and that's going to put space between them all as well. So you don't have to do like margin on each one of these. And then we can also change the order. So let's say that the fourth one here, I'm going to say order -1, and then let's do order 4 for this one. And then for this one, let's say order -2. And then the first one here, we'll say order -3. So if I go ahead and save that, now you'll see the 04 is first, and second one is second. The third one is 01 because that's order 3, and then the third one has order 4, so that's the last one here. So now we're going to look at how the flex items grow and shrink and how we can set them to fill certain amounts of space. So I'm going to copy this first flex box and all the items, and I'm going to comment it out, and I'm going to comment this one out just to avoid confusion, and then we're going to paste that in here, and we can take off the height and then take off the alignment classes. And I'm also going to add a couple more, so 4, 5, 6, we'll do 7, and let's set that to 5, 6, 7. And if I save that, we should see something like this. Now I'm just going to add a width onto the first 4 because those are the ones that I want to deal with and show you these classes. So we'll do a width of 64. So that should be dash. We'll do a width of 64 on all of these. So the first 4. So if we save that, now you can see the first 4 are now, I believe it's 2.5 rem, W64. And you'll see that they do shrink. So they shrink to, whatever these are. They don't stay at width 64. And then they also grow to width 64. And if we look down here, there's a bunch of classes. So flex none, flex initial, flex auto, and flex 1. So basically, by default, I believe these are flex initial, which will allow the item to shrink but not grow, taking into account its initial size. All right, so if we put flex initial on the first one here, we shouldn't really see any difference. It shrinks to that, and then it grows basically to a maximum size of 64. Okay, and then we still have this remaining space here. So let's look at some of these other ones. We have flex none, which will prevent the item from growing or shrinking. So on the second one, let's add flex, we'll say flex dash none. And now notice that even on when I have the browser really small, it's still going to take up that width 64. Okay, because it doesn't allow it to shrink or grow. So as it grows, you'll see it's always going to stay the same, basically. So that is flex none. And then we also have flex auto, which will allow the item to grow and shrink. So the other two that we've looked at prevent the item from growing. So this one allows it to shrink but not grow. This prevents both growing and shrinking. Flex Auto will allow the item to grow and shrink, and it will take into account its initial size. So let's add Auto onto the third one here. So we'll say Flex-Auto. Okay, and now the third one will continue to grow and fill up the entire space. Okay, so now there's no space left. It takes up the entire thing, and it can grow and shrink. And then we have Flex 1, which will also allow the item to grow and shrink as needed, ignoring its initial size. So Flex Auto will actually take into account its initial size. So the difference is on the Flex property, this is auto, this is going to be 0%. So let's put Flex 1 on the fourth one. So Flex-1. So the fourth one will just continue to grow as well and fill up that space. All right, so there's not a lot of difference between Flex Auto and Flex 1. So if I just wanted to have, let's say three even columns, then we could say Flex, and let's do we'll do Flex-1, and I don't know, BG-blue-100, and just say hello. And we'll have 3 of these. So if I do that, now you'll see, and maybe we want to do a text center. Okay, so now we have 3 even columns that go all the way across. And I mean, it's going to be different depending on the amount of content you have in here as well, as to if you even need to use this. But we'll go through all this in the projects. You'll see exactly how Flexbox can be used to create layouts. All right, so in the next video, we're going to talk about some of the grid classes that Tailwind offers.